Well, hello there. In this video, we're going to take a look at a couple of new features in release 2.2.1 for DockShell. In particular, we're going to look at a new property that we've added to our UI fragments and into our commands that allow you to specify a target region control, if you will, and a supporting region to be able to inject commands at runtime into, and or UI fragments. So we have, as a starting point, we have a v3 LightSwitch application. We've got a number of data elements, entities that are defined, and this is out of a standard book club data source that is available from Microsoft. And we've added two screens, a books list detail and a members list detail. And in the application itself, we have enabled the DockShell 2.2.1 extension, and we have turned on the security administration and set it to grant for debug, so we can at least see those menus. On the client side, if we look at the properties for the client, you can see that we have, from a screen navigation perspective, we've created a navigation group called Books and one called Members, and we've positioned each of the screens that we've created here into the various navigation groups respectively. And we have an administration, roles, and users screen, which in this example will show as we have it set up. So that's kind of the basic LightSwitch application, and if we then flip over to our file view, take a look at our client and take a look at our references. We've added a Telerik reference from our Telerik DockShell provider for Telerik, and a number of Telerik third-party controls to support that provider within the application itself. Finally, we've added a number of solution folders. We have a DockShell DS folder, and that's basically where we're putting all of our DockShell artifacts. And in there we created another solution folder called model, and in there we've added our model. So for information on how to do all of this, there's plenty of other videos that demonstrate that. Let's take a look at the model. We'll open that up. And as you can see from our model, nothing out of the ordinary, pretty much the same stuff we normally have in our models. So let's run it and take a look and see what it looks like. Okay, so as it spins up, you can see that there are 3 tabs. We've actually modeled this so that these 2 tabs share the same docking area, and this one has its own docking area. This is illustrated in the model. If you look back, if you go back to the model itself, you can see that we have these 2 ribbon tabs sharing a docking region and administration with its own docking region. So we go back to our application, and as we open this, we can see that it opens pretty much like it normally would, and it is a docking framework, so as all videos have illustrated, you can open and close. Okay, so what we're going to do is, in previous videos, there's ways or techniques by which you can take the navigation commands and or any type of action command and have it so that it automatically gets wired into a region. So we have this quick access toolbar that's at the top here, and what we're going to use that for is just to demonstrate how we can target our navigation commands and automatically go into the specific regions. Alright, so traditionally the one technique that you can use is you can use a toolbox approach, and you can take a link tool and you can simply just drag a link from here over to the supporting region. And again, there's videos that illustrate this, and if I look at this region just for a second and look at the properties of that region, you can see that this is our quick access toolbar region. This region is actually defined inside your XAML within your custom shell, and this particular shell is actually the default shell control that's shipped with the Telerik provider. So that's one way that you could do it, and of course there's a few other things that you have to do to kind of enable all of that. But having said that, your model starts to get a little bit messy and so on and so forth. So what maybe is a better approach is to use this new feature that we have, which if we slip out the properties window here and take a look, and if we scroll down, we'll see this new property under the Prism grouping called Target Region Name. So basically, Target Region Name, as this text down below illustrates, is a optional text string that you can put in to specify a target control and its supporting Prism region. So for example, when we looked at our, let's pin this back for a sec and take a look. We look at our region that's here. We know that from our model, we look at this guy here, we know that this region is called Application Quick Access Toolbar region. And we also know that that particular region is situated inside this particular area, which is the application ribbon area. So we take the ribbon control name, we go back to our properties, specify, and let's see if we go down to Prism again, find our Prism name, there we go. We can just paste that in. It's separated by a dot notation, so this is the control name, and then followed by the region that we're hoping to inject our particular control in, which in this case here is the access toolbar region. So if I go back to my control, navigation DockShell command, and now I paste in this. Now what we have is we have a full name that we can look at, and from there we can specify specify both the control and the target region itself. So once again, the control followed by a Prism region within that control. So let's take a look at the actual provider logic to see how this breaks down. I'm going to open up the provider project and the root shell default shell control. Okay, with the provider project open, I'm just going to navigate down and take a look at my shell folder, and in here open up the shell root. And if I scroll down a little bit, we can see as we look through here, we have this thing called an application navigation container, but inside here we have this thing called a ribbon view, and that's really this top piece here that contains the ribbon tabs that we're injecting through our model. And so if you look here, you can see that the name is application ribbon area. And within here, we also have a number of other things, like, for instance, a backstage. But here's that quick access toolbar. And you can see that its name, its region name, is application quick access toolbar region. And so that's essentially where we're getting our target region name that we're using here. So this is the control, this control name, and this is the region that we're targeting. All right, since this is a command at the top, what we'll do is just give this a run and see what it looks like. All right, so as you can see, here it is at the top. In fact, if we pull it down and show below, we can see that we have moved the command completely out of the navigation group or the ribbon tab, and we've moved it over to this quick access toolbar, which, you know, this is for demonstration purposes and probably not an ideal scenario, but as you can see, it is a navigation command that opens up the screen just as it normally would. Okay, it's great. So now let's do the same thing. Let's put this one back. So we'll keep the name, and so basically this this name here is the main override. So without that name, or if you spell it incorrectly, so for example, if I put a 2 in here and rerun this, you'll see that when we rerun it, that now the button shows back up inside this ribbon button group area. So that ribbon button group is there, but if there are no targeted components inside of it, it will hide itself. And that's the automatic default behavior. That's part of the DockShell framework. So as you can see, because the target name was misspelled, it couldn't identify or couldn't find this particular control, this quick access toolbar, because the name was incorrect, and instead chose to default to the default behavior. Okay, so that's fine. So let's now go and add go to the Solution Explorer, And what we'll do is we'll flip over from File View to Logical View. And in the Books List Detail screen, let's add another command. And so we'll just minimize this, pull this across. There we go. And let's add a new command. And let's just call this one, some command. We actually won't do anything other than put some code in and establish a breakpoint. All right, so once we save that, we simply flip back to our model, do a right-click, refresh. Whoops, right-click and refresh. And that will actually bring in that command. And what's basically happened here is this green dot is the LightSwitch command. This is the DockShell command associated to that. All right, so now that we have that in play, we're going to do a few things. Let's add an icon to our, just fix this up a little bit, and I'll be right, there we go, so we can see what we're seeing here. All right, let's add an icon. And I've got a few icons here already, so what I'll do is I'll just pick this one here. That sounds good. Actually, let's pick something like that. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to target a different region. I'm going to target this region here, which is the application context menu region. So again, once again, we get the name of that region. We go back to our control. We bring down into our Prism region itself, right here. So that's the region name, and of course, what we need is this name here. For the control itself, and I'm just going to take this, copy that, and what I'll do is highlight that and just delete it so that we don't we keep that command back in the navigation group, and then we'll just add the name of the control, which is application ribbon area, and now we're going to target this control to the application context region itself. A few more things we need to do. We need to give it a title, so let's call this some command. And a tooltip. This is a command. And let's change we've got an icon here, which is probably okay. But what we'll do is we'll change this from a ribbon command to a menu item. So other videos will explain how and what that is. Basically what we're doing here is we're just changing the command type from a rad ribbon command to a rad menu item command. All right, so let's see if this works, and we'll just give that a spin and run it up. All right, here we are. So now if we run books, let's see what happens. Now if we right-click, you can see that the command pops up, and if you click it, it takes you to the code behind. Now, since these commands are actually established on a per screen basis, if I was to go into members, and again, remember we're sharing the same docking area in members, and I was to open up the members screen, notice when I'm on the members screen, it's kind of hard to see because this one's, let's just dock this one to the side. So now I'm on the members screen, you can see it at the top here, but when I right click I don't see the command. It's only because it's context sensitive to the commands that you're on. So you can see that once I click on this particular screen, I do have the command come back. So that's kind of cool. But if we go over here, again, no commands. If I go here, no commands because I'm on the members list screen. But if I click on there, you can see that I have that. All right. So that's pretty much it for the region, the ability to target a command using the new direct approach, which is basically using this target region name. Target regions are also supported on the UI Fragment. So basically, if you look here, you will see that there is a ability within a UI Fragment to also specify a target region name. So for information on UI Fragments, there's plenty of videos on that to show how they work. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to change this default ribbon tab, and in fact what we'll do is we'll create a copy of this, and we're going to add it to our LightSwitch project. So I'll do that and pause the video and be right back and show you what I've done. All right, I decided to take you a little through kind kind of how I would pull the file in. So right now, if you look here, you can see that I'm inside the Telerik provider project, and in the default controls, I'm actually looking at this particular control. And this is the default control that we're using for the default control that we use for all sort of DockShell applications at the startup for the Telerik provider. You can see that it has a number of embedded controls inside of it, and those correlate to the rad ribbon groups that you would see on the actual when the application is running. So you got data, custom, screen, and action. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this and this file into our LightSwitch project and change it up a little bit. So I'm going to pause the video and I'll do that and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back and I'm just going to paste it into my client. So nice thing about organizing this with solution folders is that we can add a new solution folder, and we'll just call this one, let's call them ribbon tabs. Or ribbon tabs is good. And then we just right click and I will then paste an existing item, and what I will do is just push that to there, grab this, and add that accordingly. So now we have the control, but of course the name is going to conflict with the name that's in the provider project. So the first thing I want to do is, if you've got ReSharper, which is turned on here, I'm going to change this up so that the namespace is, matches up with the namespace in my LightSwitch provider, or sorry, my LightSwitch client. And then maybe what I'll do is I'll change this to say my custom book ribbon tab control. And let's change this. So basically this is a string, and we want to change this to something that is more applicable. So let's change this to my book ribbon tab. There we go. So now that I have that, I'm just going to make a copy of that. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Copy that. And we're just going to rename that, and also the constructor. And then we're going to right click and go into the designer. And in the designer, what we'll do is scroll down. We're going to find the class name and just alter that, because it's going to still be wrong from the old. There we go. So now basically what we have is we essentially have the same control that we have in our project. So let's just do a quick build, and let's see if we can see that within our model. So we've got a few problems here. Let's resolve those first. It's good to actually see these things so that you can resolve them, and I'm just going to use ReSharper to resolve these embedded controls. These are actually placed, you'll find these in your provider project. Okay, so now if we give this a quick build, we should build okay. Excellent, and let's go to our model. And this is a key thing, that step that I think a lot of people fail to do. So if I was to, for instance, go here into my properties, and then I want to change this, I'm expecting to see my control here, but I don't see it. And the reason I don't see it is because you still have one more step here, which is to refresh the model. And that's where DockShell, the DSL, will enumerate all of the assemblies and look for all of the supporting exports. Now you can see that we have my book ribbon tab there. That's good. Excellent. So now let's give this a spin, see what it looks like. Expectation is it should be about the same as what it was before. In fact, exactly the same, because we haven't changed anything. We've simply just moved where our ribbon tab definition is coming from for only the book tab itself. The original one, tab for members, is still the default tab, the same with administration. But this is now using this this copied instance of that template that we just created, and it still works fine, just as before. All right, so now let's close this down. Okay, so now let's go back to our new ribbon tab that we've just created, and let's rename this so that it makes more sense. Let's call this one the Books Ribbon Tab. Okay, and let's go inside of this guy. All right, so what we're going to do is I'll just get rid of some of this space here and minimize this so that we can see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a region, a new control. So let's go and let's add a rad ribbon group. Sorry, rad ribbon group. And satisfy that with the Telerak. And inside my rad ribbon group, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a, let's see, a rad, so Telerak. I always forget the names of these, but Telerak, rad, ribbon, let's see, gallery, let's say. All right, so now we have a gallery inside our group, and let's give it a few things such as a name. So let's give this guy a name. We'll call this one, let's just say RRG, make it simple. And let's give this guy a name, and his name will be equals RG for ribbon group. All right. Now let's copy the. Let's put a header on this ribbon group too. So header, and we're not going to do any fancy data binding at this point. We're just going to simply say this is a test ribbon group. And let's now let's take a copy of this right here, and let's paste that in here. And let's give this a new name. Let's call this one the RG region. Now the interesting thing about this is that these regions do have to be unique. So that's one thing within the scope of the control itself. So I can't do something like this where I have two regions by the same name. It's kind of like having the same name. But Prism basically will not let that. I like that very much. Okay, so now we have our gallery and we have our ribbon group. And so basically I think hopefully you know where I'm going with this. I'm actually going to inject one of our nav controls. In this case it will be this guy, and we're going to inject him into that region. So to do that, what we need to do is identify where this is coming from. So where it's coming from is actually this control. So the control name is actually books ribbon. Now it has a space in there, so when you actually apply this to your properties here, you can remove that space. So for instance, instead of books space ribbon, just books ribbon, and then you put a period. So that's the control. Now we want to target a region. Well, let's start with something simple, which is this region. So let's do that first. And if we go back to our control and back to our properties, and now back to our Prism setting there, and we just simply put in there. And let's see how that runs. So that is still set as a ribbon button, but instead of it going into the default control, which was the navigation ribbon group, now it should go into a different one. In fact, it should go into this new test ribbon group, as you can see here. So there's the command. Basically, it's the same command, but it's now targeting this group here. So for instance, if I was to have another screen in here, and I wasn't targeting it, it would go into that default navigation group. That's part of that default template. All right, so that's okay, but really what I want to do is I want to stick it in here. So let's stop this for a second. And we do know from our example here that our region that we want to target is this RRG region. So let's go to our command and simply add an extra R on our name, and like so, and run that and see what we get. All right, well, as you can see, it's there, but it's the icon is not all that well defined. But if I click on that, you can see that it'll push out the command, and so it's active. You'll also notice that it's not showing up on this side here anymore, which is kind of nice. So the idea is now I can build out a gallery of optional commands and make them more appropriate. So let's just see if we can clean that up a bit. So we got the command in there. Why is it coming up so large? Well, in the case of the rad ribbon button command, it defaults to a large icon. So what we need to do is we can either let's change this to a menu item, and I think that might be all we need to do. Let's give that a spin and see what kind of damage we've done. Well, what we've done is we've made it really small, and I think there's some templating that we need to do to kind of pull that in dress it up nicely. But essentially what you can see here is that now, instead of having a whole series of commands, we can actually group them inside these special command containers. And there's all sorts of command container options that you have with third-party controls. And so by basically doing this, we can actually move our commands around and from a navigation perspective, and actually have them so that they fit nicely within sort of the confines of your business application. All right, well, thank you very much. That is the end of our little video here, just to give you sort of a heads up on the usage of this new Prism target region name capability within DockShell 2.2.1. Thank you very much and have a great day.